They were out early one morning, panning in the stream for gold, surrounded by the rising mountains. Old prospector with a tale for two, he brushed around in the pan, pointing out what lay within was ordinary sand. He began with his story about 20 years before, and the younger man who sought his fortune. With a tear or two he told of searching for his treasure, but making known the gold he sought was ordinary pleasure. There were years of doing without, and there were years of plenty. They started thinking that life was never steady, excepting when the bills came in and they had no money to pay. Whiskey had never tasted better ordinarily. Concluded his story as it filled the air with a laugh, saying how he found the Lord and Savior, and how he found the river of life by which his day unfolds, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Through His word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. his love. We can return his love with devotion, standing on his word before all men. We are his beloved and his chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon his promises. Trust in God, believe upon his promises.
All right, God bless you all. My name is Mark Wallace with True North Studio, and we are, I just want to welcome everybody. Thank you for dialing in and doing the live stream here. Today the topic is the tryouts of Jesus, temptations. Okay, now I was thinking about this topic, and we heard that the Florida Marlins, a major league baseball team, was holding tryouts in our city looking for raw talent. And my son, a pretty good young baseball player, begged me to go. He was only 15 or 16 years old. He had talent, but I confess I was shocked when they allowed him to try out with the young adults. The scouts were looking for 5 basic things. They wanted to find a player who could hit different pitches, hit for power, run the bases smartly, throw accurately and with strength, and could field the ball well. They were looking for what's called a 5-tool player. And these scouts had seen tens of thousands of kids and could tell instantly who was ready and who wasn't ready. And with these 5 standard drills, they could quickly tell if any of these kids had what it took to play in the bigs. Well, the whole tryout was over as fast as it started, and my boy left the tryouts with a smile on his face, a pat on the back, and try again next year, kid. Well, my son went on to play college ball in a couple of years, but for Jesus, there was no try again, kid. The tryout God had sent him to was make or break. He had trained his whole life for this moment, for this year. But before he could save the world, he had to pass this first round of tryouts. No one had ever passed the tryouts. Now, depending on what you want or need, the term tryout means different things. If you're a soccer mom needing to run 3 active kids around, you'll probably try out a minivan or an SUV. If you want to get noticed in the music industry, you may try out at some talent show or send your demo tape to a famous producer and hope that she gives it a listen. If you're a pro scout looking for a sports phenom, a unicorn, a 5-tool player, you may schedule tryouts in a few major cities. If you're in the military and really want to test yourself, you may choose or be chosen to attend recon, ranger, bud, special forces, or pararescue schools. I once did some rock climbing with a group of men and women, and one of whom was a former Navy SEAL. And we'd set up camp and we're cooking dinner and we're basically done for the day. The wind was a little much, but the sunset was spectacular. Well, a group of us were going to do a quick run and climb before dark, so I asked him if he wanted to go. I said, man, it'll be a challenge. It'll be challenging. And he adjusted a tent stake, looked up at me and said, nope, I don't need the challenge. You may be wondering why I'm using the word tryouts and avoiding the word temptations of Jesus. Well, there's a reason. A temptation is the desire to do something wrong or unwise. A tryout tests your skill. You don't tempt drive a minivan, you test drive it. Most preachers teach that when Jesus was tempted with food because he was hungry, and he was tempted with ego because he was asked to jump off a tall building and fly back down. The angels would fly him back down to safety of a public area. They say he was tempted with worshiping the devil when he offered a shortcut to all the power in the world. Well, I disagree. A mom may say, you keep testing me and you're going to learn a lesson that cannot be learned anywhere else. Well, the kid isn't tempting his mom or her mom. She's trying mom's patience. She's seeing how far she can push mom before all hell breaks loose. A test or a tryout exposes the skill you've already developed and lets you know if you're ready to compete. It also shows you how you measure up to the competition. The temptation of Jesus, the temptations of Jesus were not temptations at all, but they were tryouts. They were 3 well-rehearsed tests that had stumped every other human who ever lived until Jesus. Jesus was so skilled, so formidable, so advanced in his knowledge of the Word that the devil had to take him through the same final 3 parts of the tryout twice in a row. This had never happened before. No one ever had even passed the test, not even perfect people like Adam and Eve. A side note, little did the devil know that he too was being tested, but he was being tested by Jesus. You see, he was being evaluated. Well, after 40 days of lions, cheetahs, bears, wild dogs, and snakes, after 40 days of starvation, Jesus is about to face 3 subtle tests, 3 challenges, 3 encounters that typically trip up any spiritually minded person. Jesus would need to discern between what was written, between the cracks of the devil's questions and what was written in the heart of God. And today we're going to see how Jesus handled the pain, the pressures, and the pleasures that we all face. We're all tested. We all go through this tryout in some way, shape, or form. My desire is that you will realize that you too are designed to handle any temptation, any trial, and any opponent and still win. So open your Bibles to Matthew chapter 4 and let's marvel at the tryouts of Jesus, and maybe we can learn a thing or 3. Second round of tryouts. Jesus went through part of the tryouts twice, not because he had flaws, but because he had none. He was perfect. The devil had never seen this before. If you studied this out, you're going to remember that the records in Luke 4 and Matthew 4 are similar, but they're not identical. You see, if you compare Luke 4 and Matthew 4 side by side, you're going to easily see the similarities and the differences. Jesus went through the final 3-pronged test twice, and you could find this in Bullinger's Companion Bible Appendix 116. Well, the Gospel writer Mark summarized Jesus' entire double tryout in just 2 verses. Mark 1, 12 and 13. And immediately the Spirit driveth him into the wilderness. And he was there in the wilderness 40 days, tempted of Satan, and was with the wild beasts, and the angels ministered unto him. See, God sent Jesus into the wilderness to be tested. He was to be tested by Satan for 40 days, would be checked out by wild beasts for 40 days, and wouldn't eat for 40 days. Then he would have to pass a 3-part test administered by the devil himself twice. It was Jesus. All Jesus had was the clothes on his back and the word in his heart up against the one and only devil. Now, for angels to have to come and minister to Jesus after it was all over lets you know the tryouts must have been grueling. And each of us has faced these skill tests in some light or fashion. And they are really designed for those of us who are getting back into the game, getting back into walking by the Spirit, getting back into using our gifts and our calling. They're also designed for newborn Christians just getting started. The pressure is always on when you push yourself to grow, to utilize your gifts, and to help others. We all get tested. Today, I will point out a few things that may help us pass our test. The devil's challenge and Jesus' response to the scripture Jesus used and the lesson learned. Like two Cubs sportscasters, Luke was tasked to report the first round of tryouts, Matthew the second. We will cover the second round. Matthew chapter 4, verse 1. Then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. You see, then the devil taketh them into the holy city, and setteth them on a pinnacle of the temple, and saith unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou shalt dash thy foot against a stone. You see, verse 7, Jesus said unto him, It is written, again, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Again the devil taketh them up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth them all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. 10. Then Jesus said unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. 11. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, the angels came and ministered unto him. The warm-up. Now we're going to look at each of the three main temptations and try to figure out where the devious devil, this professor of pandemonium, coach of chaos, was really going with these three-layered tryouts. The tempter, the tryout master, has been preparing for this moment for thousands of years. He had been preparing since God announced in paradise that there would be a promised one to challenge him someday. Jesus had been preparing for this moment his whole life, about 30 years. Matthew chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. Then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered. Well, the fact that the tempter is even going for a second time to trick the Messiah here tells that he's hoping that there's still a chance he can defeat the Christ. All it's going to take is an ever so slight mental shift, and the Messiah is mush. All he has to do is find that crack. Everyone has a weak spot. All these scrawny humans have an Achilles heel. He may be in for a surprise, this devil guy. Now, it's important to know that the word hungered here does not mean that he was famished. It has another meaning too. After a 40-day fast, most people don't even feel hungry, believe it or not. They were way past hunger. The word hunger here means pinched. It means ribs showing, stomach pinched, and cheeks drawn in. He looked hungry. That's what it's talking about. Now we're going into the three-part test. The devil had already gone through with Jesus at least one time, not at least once. And Luke said that he left for a season. Well, then he comes back. So he's already been through this test once. Now he goes through it a second time. And so now he comes back to Jesus even more prepared. He was determined to find a weakness in Jesus, but the Christ, with his newfound Spirit of God, will prove he was not one to be underestimated. Round 2, test 1. Matthew chapter 4, verse 3. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. Here the devil's given the title of tempter or tester. And this is the first of 3 different names. And this means he showed himself in 3 different forms. This is going to be interesting. Now, who would the devil have looked like here? He had to look like something. He had to look like someone. Did he resemble someone who Jesus trusted or knew well? Probably. Maybe he resembled someone like his cousin John the Baptist. And this would make some sense after we look at this next comment. The devil said, if thou be the Son of God. Now you think maybe that's sort of weird. Well, Jesus doesn't even respond to that comment. You see, Jesus doesn't even respond to that hypothetical, if thou art the Son of God, or let's suppose you're the Son of God. Why? Why didn't Jesus respond? Because he'd heard it all before. He'd heard it his whole life. Everybody he knew asked him that. His mom and his brothers and his friends didn't always understand him. In fact, they thought he was crazy at times. Mark chapter 3 verse 21 says that. His mom even kept what kept Jesus' calling bottled up in her. Luke 2:19. Do you think as a kid his cousin John ever asked him the big question? You know, cousin Jesus, you you ever wonder if you really are the Messiah? Do you ever wonder if you really are the Christ? Now think about it. Wouldn't you have asked your cousin if he was told, if his parents told you that he was the Christ? Sure you would. All the family talked about this stuff. We know that just a few short weeks after this initial temptation, after Jesus got his ministry started, his cousin John the Baptist, asked him the same question the devil had just asked. Look at Luke 7:19 through 23. John had asked him if he really was the Christ. This was not really an unusual question to Jesus, so he didn't bother to respond. Jesus knew and believed exactly who he was. Jesus didn't respond to the devil's ridiculous question because just 40 days ago, he literally heard the voice of God telling him, "Thou art my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased." Mark chapter 1, verse 11. Newsflash, his cousin John heard that same thing too. You see, the challenge. And we're going to break this down into challenge and response. Challenge. The tester, the tempter now casually commands, "Hey Jesus, command that these stones be made bread." Now we all know that Jesus hadn't eaten in 40 days, and he needed some nourishment. He needed some bread. You see, but Jesus was in no way tempted to turn a bunch of rocks into loaves of bread, no matter how much they looked like flatbread. You see, turning stones into bread was not the temptation. It was a disguised challenge. Hunger is not the real issue here. There's a deeper meaning. Jesus knew that God would supply his personal need. God sent him on this mission. God sent them to these tryouts. He remembered that he had been protected from sure death when an angel warned his stepdad that soldiers were slaughtering all the other young boys. He knew how the wise men had given enough money to support them when they were away in Egypt. What about the time when he was 12 years old and spent 3 days away from his family? He knew God would supply. So what was the big trick here? Well, we're going to find that the true test is in the context of Jesus' response. Matthew 4:4. But he answered and said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God." Now here's a simple answer, but there's much more implied. That statement is pregnant with meaning, scripture content. Jesus had memorized the Old Testament. Jesus had memorized the Old Testament and committed large portions of it. He'd committed the whole thing to memory. And Jewish boys of that day, they had to remember and memorize large sections of that. So here's the Old Testament verse that he had to memorize in its entirety for just such an occasion. Here God supplied something that was needed but had never existed. Deuteronomy 8:3. And he humbled thee, and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with manna, which thou knowest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee known that a man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doth man live. Now, a few million children of Israel had left Egypt and headed into the wilderness with the clothes on their backs and a small amount of food. And they quickly exhausted that food supply, and they were getting a bit hungry. And God supplied a food that no one on earth had ever seen or tasted before. They called it manna. And for almost 40 years, this miraculous, tasty food appeared. And they learned to expect that God would supply just enough manna for each family to eat each and every day, but no more. And the deeper context of this partial verse that Jesus quoted was that God supplied manna to show the children of Israel that He is good at His word and He will supply the miraculous. So expect the miraculous. Jesus had no doubts that God would come through for him with food. God always did. The word promised. Here's the lesson. It's written that God will miraculously supply your every need each and every day. The temptation, the test was not satisfying hunger or ending starvation. The challenge was not turning stones into bread. That could happen. After all, didn't Jesus turn water into wine? So we know something like that's available. What verse do you use when you feel hungry? When you're alone? When you feel broke? Or you're questioning your calling? What do you need in order to live the life God called you to live? God said He will supply all your need out of His riches. That's Philippians 4:19. Even if they never existed before, God can still supply. Paul said it well also. 1 Corinthians 10:13. There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. See, it is written, God will miraculously supply your every need each and every day. Now, round 2, test 2. And this is in a different order than round 1, test 2. Matthew 4, verses 5 through 7. Then the devil taketh them up into the holy city, and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple, and saith unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down. For it is written, He shall give His angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands shall they bear thee, lest at any time thou shalt dash thy foot against a stone. And Jesus said unto him, It is written, again, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. This time he's called the devil, not the tempter. He's appearing in a different form. Again, it had to be a human and trustworthy form of some sort. The words take him up is not the same word as led in Mark chapter 4. And here it gets very intimate. It involves touching. The devil, who looked like someone Jesus wouldn't mind walking or being with, looked like someone he also had to look like someone who had access to any part of Herod's temple in Jerusalem. Probably looked or dressed like a high priest or some rabbi who Jesus loved and respected. In this second form, the devil literally held Jesus, maybe by the arm or maybe by the shoulder as they walked all the way to Jerusalem, into the temple, and up onto the highest wall of that temple. And because of his outfit, he had access with both the priests and the Romans who also watched that self-same wall. I wonder if he looked like one of the kind high priests Jesus spoke with and stayed with for 3 days when he was 12 years old. I don't know. Here's the challenge. Matthew 4:6. If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give His angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou shalt dash thy foot against a stone. See, this is a weird request. Jesus was not suicidal. He had a lot to live for. He was not egotistical like so many Bible scholars pontificate. He was not looking for notoriety. That would come all too soon. Jumping and getting flown down by angels was not a temptation for Jesus. Notice that the devil is quoting scripture from Psalm 91, verses 11 and 12, much like a kindly old priest would do. It sounds very loving. The angels will take care of you even if you stub your toe, Jesus. Just so you know, the devil could have easily seen all his drooling demons circling the courtyard below, as well as all the powerful angels of God who were also there. Don't you think the devil could have seen that? Remember how Elisha asked God to open the eyes of his servant so that he could see that there were far more angels with them than there were enemy against them? And he saw chariots of fire. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 17. See, Jesus may have been able to see God's angelic host. It's possible. He still would never jump. That's crazy. You know, jumping and getting caught by angels was not on the test. Once again, we're going to see what the devil was really getting at in Jesus' answer. Here's the response. And at verse 7 of Matthew 4. Jesus said unto him, it is written again, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Now that's deep. Why would he answer about not testing God? Well, let's consider the context. Here's a scriptural context. The verse Jesus quoted again comes from Deuteronomy, and it's 6 verse 16. Ye shall not tempt the Lord your God as ye have tempted him in Massah. Now, the region called Massah is mentioned in Exodus 17. And Exodus 17:7 says, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the chiding the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? Now, the children of Israel were belly aching because they were thirsty. You know, they were asking each other and trying to put God to the test by saying, are you here or are you not, God? We want a drink and we want it now, dude. And they were challenging God. They were trying to force his hand. God then told Moses to smack a particular rock with his staff. And when he did, water began to gush out of that area. Lesson. It is written, trust that God will always come through when you need him. We don't need to guilt God into caring for us. This test has nothing to do with ego or suicide or notoriety or even angels. This is about guilt-shaming God to get what we want. Have you ever wondered if God saw your need? You ever wondered if God heard your prayer? Come on, God, what's going on? Don't you see I need a little help over here? You see, we've all wondered where God was when we needed him. Jesus never wondered. Jesus never wondered. Jesus trained himself to believe that God was always right there to care for him. You know, we can do the same. Remember that God is always near you. You know, he will never leave or forsake you, and his angels surround you when you need them. It is written, trust that God will always come through when you need him. No guilt required. Now here's round 2, test 3. Round 2, test 3. Now we get to our final test of the day. You know, this one is a whopper. This test is hard to resist and easy to rationalize. Hardly anyone gets past this one. You see, Matthew 4, 8 through 10. And again the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and saith unto him, all these things will I give thee. You know, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then Jesus answered unto him, get thee behind me. Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. This time Jesus calls the devil Satan. This is El Diablo's third outfit change in this triad. The devil again grabs Jesus, holds on to him like a good friend, and walks him onto the highest mountaintop around. Now, as you all know, there's no mountain high enough to see every kingdom of the world, right? It had to be a visual display and by no means some type of revelation from the devil, as some preachers suggest. This is where it gets interesting. The devil was once the angel of light and can still transform himself into what he once looked like. 2 Corinthians 11, 4 through 14. You know, he was the most beautiful creature in the universe. He was perfect in beauty, like Ezekiel 28:12 says. This ex-angel of light can manipulate color better than any 100-inch 4K Ultra HD smart dual color laser TV, better than any 3D glasses at an Omni theater. What Jesus was probably seeing now was by far the most beautiful thing created, the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. This is what got Eve so flustered. The word serpent in Genesis means shiny one. The devil here has to be stunning. If he had wings, they would be spread out and gleaming in the sun. If he had teeth, they would be whiter than any Hollywood star. If he had hair, it would be perfect. You see? You know, if he had clothing, it would be resplendent, jewel-covered, and magnificent. His eyes would be hard not to gaze into. Muscles would be bulging. No man or beast comes close to what the devil would have looked like there. If the devil made himself look like a woman here, she would have been jaw-dropping beautiful. The culmination of all the girls Jesus ever took a second glance at. You see, she would have owned her look. After all, God originally made him or her that way. Ezekiel 28:12 through 17 said. She would have been irresistible. Now, we all have a type. We all have a type, don't we? You see, no matter who you're married to, we can all secretly picture that perfect person. You may even blurt it out when he or she appears in a movie. Oh! But you try not to. You see, because Eve faced this same beautiful misrepresentation of the devil directly in all his or her splendor, so must Jesus Christ have seen the same thing. Here's the challenge. Matthew 4:8. Again, the devil taketh them into an exceeding high mountain and showeth them all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and said unto him, all these things will I give thee. Or, all these things will I give thee if thou wilt fall down and worship me. You see, now what woman doesn't want to be worshiped? You know, I'm just kidding. See, this time the devil didn't ask, hey, if hypothetically speaking, Jesus, you think you might just be the Son of God. Well, he didn't say that. This time the if is centered around direct worship. He said, Jesus, consider this just for a moment. Think about what it would be like to have it all. Think about what it would be like to actually have it all. You could save the world now if you had all that kind of power and all that money. All you need to do is response. Verse 10. Then Jesus said unto him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. You see, notice Jesus adds the word serve, and that's the key word here. Now let's look at the context. Here's the scripture context, verse 10. Then Jesus saith unto him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Now, notice the word serve here, it means to, we've got to look at the context here, and then it'll make more sense. In Deuteronomy 6:13 through 14, from the King James Version, thou shalt fear the Lord thy God and serve him, and shalt swear by his name. Ye shall not go after the other gods. You shall not go after other gods of the people which are round about you. And the context here is three-part: respect, serve, and repeat. So who are you going to serve? And we serve who we love. And if we're really into it, we serve again and again and again, right? Well, the word swear in that verse that Jesus was quoting from is a bit different than we think that the word swear means. The word swear doesn't mean to make an oath. Swear means to seven, the number seven. It means to seven. Or what it meant to them in that day and time, it means to repeat an act or an oath 7 times. Or commit yourself 7 times. Basically, what it means is to never quit in your commitment to God. If you're going to swear, if you're going to seven yourself, you're never going to quit. You respect the coach, you work hard for him, and you keep showing up. You stay noticed, you never quit. Isn't that what an athlete is supposed to do? Jesus was held close by this beautiful creature, and he walked right to the next, walked right next to this thing, touching the side of the most stunning, the most beautiful being that was ever created. It's hard for us to imagine, but that's what Satan looked like at this time. That's what the devil looked like. It was the most amazing, beautiful creature that had ever been created. And they walked together to the top of the mountain, and Jesus would have been pleased to walk with something that looked this beautiful. You see? And they walked to the mountain, and the devil put on the greatest light show ever. Somehow he manipulated the elements to show Jesus the magnificence of the entire Roman Empire, maybe the Han dynasty in China, and the Parthians in Iran, which was all at the same time, and the flourishing Mayans in Central America. Jesus saw the kingdoms of the world and the glory and the power of them. That must have been quite a display. The devil would have known them all, right? Somehow he manipulated light and was able to show that show to Jesus on that mountaintop. Then somehow, during that light show, the devil disappeared from view. This beautiful thing just disappeared. But the kingdoms of the world were still visible to Jesus. The devil definitely transitioned from devil to Satan at that point. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean? What's the difference between Satan and the devil? Well, the devil is a singular being. It's a singular being that God once created, and he can change forms at will. You see, but Satan is his tricks, the effects of the devil, the shiny longings, the pressures and pleasures of life that steal our hearts. Satan is the workings of the kingdoms of the world. Satan is the effects of the devil. Jesus notices the evolution of these events, and he also skillfully shifts who he was speaking to from the devil to Satan. Now, Jesus now tells Satan to get the heck out of here. He was not speaking directly to the devil at this time. Jesus clicked the remote that had fallen to the ground and turned off the amazing presentation. His words turned off the power button. Click. See, here's a lesson. It is written, keep God first and never quit in your commitment to God. See, we all get tempted to want fame and fortune. We may get flattered by amazing people who look great and have super nice things. See, but God made life easier. We don't need to fall down and worship the things of the world. Think Satan. You know, we've all sworn to serve God the moment we got born again. All of you have already done that. It is written, keep God first and never quit in your commitment to God, no matter what happens. And here's a practical tip, Matthew 4, verse 11. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. The devil slinks off, the reluctant loser that he is. Then those angels, who had been poised to fight, protect, and serve, came and ministered to Jesus. Jesus goes on to save the world, and he's still working for us today. Today we saw the second round of the 2 tryouts of Jesus. Life does not always hand us what we expect, but it usually gives us more when we stay true to our calling. I have eaten dinner with Olympic hopefuls who care about every calorie as I picked up another French fry. I've seen world-class runners pass me on the Pikes Peak Marathon like an angel was carrying them, but I just kept trudging along. I've been on the stage with multimillionaires who are so full of themselves that I was told that it suggested you don't look at these guys in the eye. I did it anyway. You see, all I can be is me, and I'm okay with that. God made us the way we are, and He's proud of us. God is proud of you. We do have a spiritual opponent who wants, we do have a spiritual opponent who wants nothing more than to disrupt your gift, to disrupt your calling, to hijack your calling. He has many looks. He has many shapes. He has many disguises. We saw how the devil took on 3 different forms. 1, he's going to come to you through your friends and family, and they will tell you that you can't when your heart says that you can. The people who can hurt you the most are the ones closest to you. Be careful. Number 2, he will come at you through people you respect and trust, and they can and will try to get you to carry their flag. They're going to get you to zig when you're supposed to zag. They're going to get you to jump when you're supposed to take a stand. People you respect who are in positions of authority can steal your heart and not even leave a bruise. Protect your heart, folks. Protect your heart from those people. And number 3, he will come at you through beauty, riches, and fame and fortune. The pull is strong with this one, folks. We all want more. We all want to be loved and respected. People, places, and beautiful things in this world will not just catch your eye, they can capture your heart. They can captivate your heart, but they'll always leave you wanting more. The beauty of the world is fleeting, but the Word lives forever. We know how Jesus answered these 3 challenges, these 3 questions that the devil asked. 1, he did it like number 1. It is written, God will miraculously supply your each and every need. 2, it is written, trust that God will always come through whenever you need Him. Don't quit. No guilt required. And number 3, it is written, keep God first and never quit in your commitment to God. These are simple to say, but harder to believe. Take the time to memorize or write down or put into your phone notes any verse that helps you handle that difficult situation. Those words of God, believed, will always back down the enemy. They did for Jesus and they will for you. Remembering what is written, remembering the right verse at the right time is how Jesus mastered His tryouts, and it's how we can master ours each and every day, each and every time. Jesus wasn't tempted to do stupid things, but He was committed to mastering His tryouts for our benefits. That is a quick story about the tryouts of Jesus. God bless you all. Love you.